Guys, this is Cheeky Chipmunks. Just coming at you with another video. Now, I know you've been a long time with a video, but I've been a bit of a busy boy, but I thought with the Psychopath movie coming out, which looks really amazing, why not go over Psychopath Season 1, because that was a fantastic season. It had a whole lot of really great topics it explored, plus some cool-ass guns, and people exploding with plenty of gore. Now, one of the main things I found really interesting about the society that Psychopaths kind of builds up is this whole idea that there's this legal system, this whole network called the Sybil system, which basically has technology so advanced it can measure your mental state. It can predict when you're sort of thinking of criminal stuff or dark thoughts, because your psychopaths goes up, and if it goes up beyond a certain level, they have they've basically got detectors which have weapons called the Dominators, which can execute you on the spot. Now, what I found an amazing kind of little moral kind of question it asked here, or it tackled, is if you had the ability, or if there's a criminal system which had the ability to look at people's mental state, predict what people were thinking, would it be right to execute someone on the spot, or should everyone go through a fair trial in regards to getting a lawyer, obviously getting their trial and getting their sentence? Because it's kind of an interesting idea of, if you can stop something, yes, you are helping society, but also you're basing it on just one single statistic, which could not always be shown the whole picture. And as we see in this kind of society, the Sybil system itself is not perfect. It does not account for a lot of different things like environmental situations the person is in, which could be raising their psychopaths. So that's a very interesting thing I think it looks at. And also you see the dependency in a way on the system and how accepting some of these kind of individuals are of it, except obviously Akane. And I like how Akane kind of tests the system and sees it more in not such a grey and white area. And you also see a very fantastic scene where she is basically sees Shogo, who's like the main villain of this show, and she's in that dilemma where her gun basically shows a clear psychopath of this main villain who's done all kinds of stuff. He's fully murdered people in pretty horrific ways, and she just doesn't know what to do. She has the shotgun there. She is unable to shoot it. When she tries, she just misses completely. And you see how she just doesn't know what to do. She's reliant on this gun, and she doesn't know if she should morally kill the person, and doesn't feel if that is totally the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, she loses her best friend. Sees her get killed in front of her eyes, which is pretty tragic right there. One of the other things I really liked, and I felt was a very strong topic in this anime, is the whole idea of how a collective, so in this it's obviously the Sybil system, but in general I think it can apply to the government nowadays, how technology is used in conjunction to over I guess, control the public and the people in the society. You see this in a number of ways, and one of the first ways obviously is you get these people whose careers are literally decided by a test at the start, so they have their test, they get their result, and they choose from a list. So if you don't you get to choose from a list, and you don't really get that choice of making your own way in the society of psychopaths. And one of the other really interesting backstories which kind of highlights this as well is how the collective in a way can be a bit, it's an imperfect system, how it can be very, say, unforgiving, is that we have this latent criminal called Iowa, and she is a musician, or was a musician, and the band she played in was deemed acceptable by the Sybil system. But because one of the other bands, and my guess is I think it was because it was basically doing negative, it's kind of like how we would look at rock, it wasn't totally clean. it is deemed unacceptable by the civil system, and literally just by hanging out with this band at a couple of points, she has to go to rehab. She has to go to therapy to get her psychopass back to normal. And then her life is changed. She no longer can really return back to a normal life. She has to become a latent criminal and work below the inspectors to get out there. And it's a lot of different cases where you see these people in this rehab centre whose psychopath is, gone beyond a healthy state according to the system. But a lot of it is like stuff which is literally like people maybe drawing on the walls. Like there's one scene where you go past and there's this guy who's got a lot of teddies. And it shows how ridiculous in a way it is, because these are just people who may be just obsessed with something, but it's nothing you really would think criminal. So it explores how censorship in a way, and how people could almost become slaves to technology and an overpowering system. And one of the other things which is really interesting, I found it tackled, is that in episode 4 to 5, there's a whole storyline of this kind of secondary character who's working with, we don't know at the time, or kind of introduces the main villain, starts to introduce him, and how he is kind of obsessed with the online kind of side of this futuristic world. You see him going to this avatar called Spooky Boogie, or the person who controls the avatar Spooky Boogie, and he basically murders her. And the thing is, he takes over Avatar. Now, no one even notices, apart from obviously the inspectors. And it kind of shows the idea of someone who is just acting in there's two different personalities, one online, who may seem totally fine, perfectly sane, and nothing wrong with him. And then you've got the other half of this person who, in real life, has got no personality. He feels very kind of lonely, so he's basically become dependent on getting all these avatars, and it's almost become like an unhealthy obsession. So it speaks to the dangers of getting over obsessed with all the online kind of things. I mean, it says also a good aspect of how it can allow people to relax, and people can share common interests. But at the end of the day, how being anonymous on the internet, and when people tend to meet, you hear stories of they meet people off the internet, and really disastrous stuff, criminal stuff kind of happens, like they're murdered or so forth. How at the end of the day, it's got to be something which is very carefully monitored, and got to be very careful with it. So I think that was a very interesting kind of little topic it explored as well. So those are, I would say, the main themes I found very interesting in Psychopaths. And there, of course, there's a bucket load of themes I probably missed, and if I rewatched it, I would probably discover a whole lot of other themes. But if there's any themes you think I've missed out, or things you found very interesting in terms of episodes in Psychopaths, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. But as I said, if you like this video, leave a like button. But I hope you have a great day, and I will make another video soon.